wrestling art with Chris Things.
Ray! Do the hammer lock. I do the hammer lock. Ray! Do the hammer lock, you turkey necks. Yeah, do the hammer lock. I do the hammer lock.
Everybody's doing it. Oh, sorry. Just got a little bit too in the hang of enjoying Buddy the Crusher. But this is not the sing-along show. This is Wrestling Art with Chris Things. Welcome to the show. I am Chris Things Brian, your host, your wrestling art pal, your guide into various weird rabbit holes of wrestling. And I'm stoked you're here to join me. Today is one of our Match of the Week episodes where we're back talking. We got 2 Match of the Weeks that I've done, the last 2 weeks worth of these weekly illustrations that I do of my favorite wrestling match that I happen to watch that week. And I get a friend on, a pal, and we chop it up. We talk about the match, we talk about the art. And that's what this thing is. And this week I'm stoked to have a great dear friend of the show and a supporter of mine, Joe of Wrestling Club fame. We had Joe on for the Lightning Rounds episode a couple of weeks back. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that chat. We talked about the Fit Finlay versus Terry Funk match, which I adore. If any of y'all didn't listen to that Lightning Rounds episode, I think it was a pretty fun one. So I'd go back. I'd put that on my top shelf of best episodes. I feel it's fun energy. But yeah, stoked to have Joe joining us a little bit later. He's kind of become a resident Terry correspondent at this point. I think the Wrestling Club deal, I always try to squeeze some Terry in because I love Terry Funk. So yeah, and Joe is a dude that seems to appreciate that too. So stoked to be talking to very fine matches, but more about that later. At the moment, we've got our little old what's going on in the world of Chris Things segment, and this is an interesting time. So I just last night had the pleasure of getting to, instead of interviewing people, instead of conducting a podcast on my own, I got to be on someone else's podcast. I was interviewed for the Tercera Cuerda podcast, the Mexican Spanish language podcast that the great guys at Tercera Cuerda run. I was honestly so tickled, I guess, to be part of that, to think that Spanish language Mexicans are interested to hear this Aussie gringo talk about my art and my art practice. Honestly, just it was a real trip. And I felt so I don't know, a little bit weird to talk about my own art in that sense when I was talking to someone else about it. It's strange how bashful you get when you're on the other end of an interview. So I have a lot of understanding for my guests when you guys come on, if anyone's a little bit on the nervous side. But it was super cool. It was an honor. I want to, massive thank you to Luis Hernandez for the chat. He had some really thoughtful questions as well. Some stuff going right back, asking me about, an illustration that I did of Octagon holding some AK-47s after his famous trip to forcibly retrieve the Octagon mask from the current Octagon Junior that AAA had instilled without his blessing. But just weird shit like that where I was like, man, you did your homework. But that was a lot of fun. So for those of you that don't know, I actually did my first ever art exhibition with Tercera Cuerda. They put on a fantastic group art show in Mexico City earlier in the year, and I was so honored to get to be part of that. To be have my art on display in Mexico, when Mexican wrestling is such a special and important part of my art practice. It's such a great inspiration for me. I have such a love for the world of lucha libre. So getting to be part of that really was very special to me, and I'm hoping that we can maybe do some more cool stuff in the future in Mexico. But yeah, so that was a really cool thing that I did just last night. It was like a sort of a translation element of it. But yeah, I'll keep you all posted when the episode comes out, because I think it ended up being a really fun chat, and it was interesting for me to sort of like speak from the heart about my art in an interview sort of manner. Yeah, so that was quite nice. I'm in the process of lining some stuff up for next year as well. We've got maybe a solo show that I'm looking to do that might be good timing for some of you all that might be coming up here for the AEW show that's taking place in Brisbane. Previously, it was going to be at Suncorp. It's just been announced, I believe, is moving to the Entertainment Centre. But yeah, if you all want to see some Chris Things art, if you all want to enjoy some wrestling club goodness when you're up, that might be a pretty cool thing that might happen. But yeah, I've also been planning out the next wrestling club. So that's taking place next week on Wednesday night here in Brisbane at the Scratch, my favorite bar of all time. I love the Scratch. I love the family atmosphere. I love all the people that work there. I love the vibes, and I love the weird little community that we've created for this wrestling club deal. Where people come along and I play some weird shit and we have a chat, and yeah, I hope we're going to be able to continue the good vibes in this next one. I think we will. But yeah, I've gone through the research phase at the moment, so I'm watching a bunch of stuff and trying to work out what'll be a cool, well-rounded, eclectic, weird playlist of pro res goodness. So I'm doing my best. I hope you'll enjoy. I will. If there's anyone listening in the Brisbane area, please come on down on a Wednesday night. So it's a free evening. And yeah, I get a lot of enjoyment out of it, and yeah, we can have a chat, or I'll also have my art prints in tow, and so the calendars. I have new calendars that are just ready for 2025. I haven't even posted those on the store yet. That's something I need to do, but those are ready to go, and I'm very pleased to say, in terms of the books, the Chris Things Match of the Week book, I have finally gotten to the end of sending them all out. This felt like such a Herculean thing. I was honestly overwhelmed by the amount of people that ordered these books. So I want to say such a massive thank you to every one of you all out there who bought this Chris Things Match of the Week Year 1 book. I did not expect the level of people taking me up on this thing as happened. So just it makes me feel really nice that I can put something like that out in the world, and that there's a bunch of weirdos out there who say, yeah, I'd like that. I'd like that book on my coffee table, or next to the toilet, or wherever you might put it. It's designed similar to the Way of the Blade, and the idea that you can just flip to a random page. You can look at a match, have a little read about my thoughts of it. Yeah, I hope people dig it. It's just a collection of a year's worth of these things, and my thoughts on some of the matches, and yeah. Anyway, if you've not got that book and you would like to, it is still available at christhings.com.au. So yeah, if you like that is a thing. But I'm keeping on doing these matches of the week. I'm just keeping on making art. And yeah, I've got a pretty terrifying December coming up. We're traveling all over Australia with this Oddities and Curiosities Expo. I'm looking forward to meeting a bunch of new faces through that thing. But yeah, that's pretty much my life at the moment. And also through all of this, we're attempting to buy a property. So it's just honestly a terrifying process. So much life admin. I hate it, but hopefully it'll be done soon. Settlement day's tomorrow, so I'll keep you posted how that goes. But until then, let's have some match of the week chatskis. Okay, let me double check here. I think this is recording, but hello, ladies and gentlemen. I ready for some match of the week goodness, and I'm delighted to have back a card-carrying member of Wrestling Club, Joe, for a full episode.
Chris, how are you?
I am good. I'm good. I was just telling you, I had some technical difficulties, but this show wouldn't be, the show that it is if it was professionally produced.
I was going to say, I don't think a podcast would be a podcast without technical difficulties. That's one of the requisites, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, man, I've had a good day. I'm in the midst of the research phase and compiling our playlist for Wrestling Club coming up next week. So very excited about that.
Oh, that is exciting. It's interesting now that we've had. Is this the 5th? Will be.
I
or the
believe
6th?
this will be the 5th. Yeah.
Yeah, and the themes, the sort of recurring themes. So I'm predicting there'll be an appearance by Terry Funk.
I think that would be a safe assumption.
And I predict a banger match from Japanese women's wrestling. Hopefully,
Ooh.
that's what I'm even. I won't request it. We don't do requests at Wrestling Club, but consistently, some of my favorite matches you show are the All Japan Women's and other women's wrestling from Japan. It's always incredible.
Well, I can't show my cards, but I like the way you're thinking. That's all I'll say there.
Excellent, great.
Yeah, dude, it's always a fun thing. The tricky part about putting together the Wrestling Club playlist is there's so many matches that I adore that are like real long form matches. So you got to be careful with that. I can't be having just a bunch of 30-minute or more matches. So sometimes I got to cull down in that area and like get some more short, punchy kind of ones. But it's always a fun challenge.
It's funny you say that because it reminds me of, it's a bit like, horror movies. I prefer horror movies nice and tight in their time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at any of the classic horror, not all the classics, but any of the modern horror movies that people think are absolutely fantastic, all of them are like 2.5 hours long. And it's hard because if you really want to go in for that ride, that's great. But sometimes you just want it to be short and sweet and to the point.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about the classic ones. Like we're just sort of like in this post Halloween sort of like time right now. Every Halloween, I normally try to jam in as many classic horror movies as I can. Last year's, I was so stoked to rewatch Rosemary's Baby. Which is just an absolutely tremendous movie.
Mm-hmm.
This year we did, they were showing The Thing, and what was it? Carrie. And dude, 2 incredible movies. But yeah, I think the older ones, especially like the 70s horror, definitely go a little bit on the longer side.
Yeah, but I mean, they're classics for a reason. But as I say, sometimes you just need a nice tight package of a film.
Especially
and
when
same
it
with
comes
wrestling.
to like your classics, like 80s slashers, I find
Mm-hmm.
they're the absolute like hard 90 minutes. That's a good time.
And also some of them, like, let's be honest, the concept that you're really dealing with doesn't bear up to more than about 90 minutes of thought. Because if you start pulling at the thread at 2.5 to 3 hours. It's like, hold on a second. How is he doing this? Where is he going? Yeah, sorry, we've gone way off track into horror movies here, so I didn't mean to distract.
No, that's exactly how this goes. So you always try to have a good amount of meandering nonsense talk before we talk about the wrestling. I half think that that's the more entertaining part sometimes, you know.
Well, since we are sidetracked, I will say, I don't know, did you watch any of the 3 recent Halloweens that the sort of soft reboot, I guess you'd call them?
The last Halloween is this like the Rob Zombie reboot?
No, the one that came after.
Oh man, I'm so out of the loop. I have not even know that there is a new remake after the Rob Zombie one, and I really quite like the Rob Zombie one actually.
Well, I caution with this one. I really like the first of the new ones, which is just called Halloween, and then there's 2 others, and the second one I despised. I saw it in the cinema with one other dude who I didn't know. He just happened to be in there. Mm-hmm. Halfway through, he stood up and I assumed went to the toilet, but never came back. So he obviously just had enough. And then I didn't bother to watch the last one. But the first one was tight, compact. It was probably about as good of a soft reboot as you could do. It basically does that thing where Jamie Lee Curtis is in it, and it just sort of assumes that Halloween happened, and then time has passed, and now we're back into the same storyline, and we just sort of ignore the Halloweens in between. That's basically the way they approach it, and I'd recommend that one, but I couldn't recommend the other 2 in good conscience.
Okay, I am a big fan of the older age Jamie Lee Curtis. She is fantastic. I can't remember. I saw her in something else recently, and she was just like the highlight of the movie. But my last movie going experience where I noticed a bunch of people like getting up and walking out was a very polarizing movie in the form of Megalopolis. And I honestly really enjoyed that movie. I loved its originality. I loved its weirdness. I loved its like just I'm making the kind of movie I want to fucking make, and everyone else can get fucked. Mm-hmm. I am very intrigued on your thoughts because there were about half the cinema got up and left during this movie.
Well, I haven't seen it, but I've heard like you mixed things, and it was sort of widely mocked online. I'd be interested to watch it. I mean, the thing is with Coppola, like, what does he really have to prove to anybody about filmmaking at this point? Nothing. Yeah. So I'm glad that he is genuinely just doing the projects that he wants to do, and however weird or strange they may be, that's fine. That's an artist more artists should do that, and he's got the luxury, unlike a lot of filmmakers, of being able to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I think of it a lot like wrestling when it comes to older directors. I think one of my favorite eras of both directors and wrestlers is when they get to that later age where they just do not give a fuck about anything, and they just have the weird things that entertain them. Mm-hmm. And it's a great time to just be able to soak up the feel of either like a great auteur director, or for a wrestler. I'm unabashed in my view that I think wrestlers' primes are in their 50s. When they get to that like age, if they're still kicking, they're doing just weird shit. They're just, I don't know, man. I think there's really something to be said about wrestlers and directors getting to that weird old phase.
And it's interesting because in both cases, and this happens in music too, of course, like maybe even more in music, there's always that part of the fan base that just wants you to keep doing whatever it was that made you like hit it big in the first place. So like people just wanted Godfather movies from Coppola, right? And Scorsese is the same. Although Scorsese goes back and forth on that himself. Bands, you see that with bands. Everyone just wants to, just write more stuff like Metallica. Like just write more stuff like Master of Puppets. Which, I mean, of course, I love Master of Puppets. But then, they wanted to make a weird album with Lou Reed based on a German play or something. It's like, all right, whatever, do what you like.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, another good example of the music is that you constantly hear of, Bob Dylan and his like more recent gigs. I remember last time he came to Brisbane, I really wanted to go, but at that time I couldn't quite justify the ticket price. And again, you hear really mixed things where it's like he's clearly there to entertain himself and anyone else who wants to go on a bit of a weird journey. But if anyone just wants to relive the classic albums, you're not getting that. But I mean, that's his call.
well, I also feel like Bob Dylan in particular at this point, like, of all the artists, isn't that what you expect a little bit? Do you know what I mean? This is a guy
Yeah.
who's had such a variation in his career. Is this not what you should expect from him? That he will be doing what he believes in, and what he believes in at the moment is this. So, and you don't have to like that, and that's okay. And artists are supposed to have vision that they're staying true to as much as possible. So, I say this as a non-artist myself, talking to an artist.
No, I think you and I are, both appreciators of the different art forms, from movies to a bunch of the different stuff with wrestling. So yeah, I think it's an interesting thing, but it's especially an interesting thing when it comes to what people's expectations of an artist are, versus the importance of expression in a way that feels like true and is fun for you to actually do. Speaking as an artist, I often think about different artists that I see that have found like a niche that people seem to like, and then it's like, all right, shit, this is my commercial success here, and I'm just gonna keep doing that. And I think you get to a certain point, like, dude, haven't you got to be like sick of like doing this same thing over and over and over again without sort of like evolving because it's got this commercial success? But I don't know. It's a fine line because you could change stray away from that, do something that you find fun, and then it's nowhere near as commercially rewarding. So I don't know what the answer is.
No, I know. Well, you've got to eat, don't you? And I think
This is true.
you've got to actually feed yourself. But there's also, I wonder whether that is why, people view it the wrong way when they see these bigger name artists who explore these other projects. But if they have that financial security, then why not explore other projects? And if it doesn't find an audience, like if Bob Dylan wanted to, if he suddenly found himself bereft of cash, he could just be like, all right, fine. Here it is, 6 gigs in the Sphere in Las Vegas. I'll just sing the hits, and he'll make his money if he wanted to do that. But if he doesn't have to do that, follow his heart.
Yeah, same thing as actors, it's taken sometimes not the most critically acclaimed roles because they would just tell anyone, hey, I had bills to pay.
Yeah.
In one way or the other, I think that those experiences do sort of like help you develop. So yeah, I don't know. All right, I think this is the point to bring us back on track. So
All right.
that's a fine little foray into some adjacent nonsense. I dig it. But today we have 2 matches to talk about. 2 matches that so one is a classic early 90s WCW match from Clash of the Champions. It's actually NWA World Heavyweight Championship match. That took place on June 16th, 1993 at Clash 23 from the Scope in Norfolk, Virginia. This was defense of Barry Windham's recently won NWA World Heavyweight Championship against the up-and-comer of the time, 2 Cold Scorpio. And this is 2 of my very favourites going at it, and a match I adored. And then our other one is a tremendous match between Stan Hansen and Terry Funk, which stoked they get to have you on to talk another Terry Funk match. This
Always.
one being the All Japan Classic from 1982, Korakuen Hall Superpower Series. This actually being Stan and Terry's first ever singles bout in Japan, I believe. It's the first one you'll see at all on Cage Match, but I assume they had to have had some sort of match in West Texas or through a bunch of the territories in America somewhere up to this point. But before we get into either individually, I just wanted to see your thoughts on the two in watching one next to the other, compare, contrast. Was there anything that like stood out to you seeing these matches, like looking at them kind of next to one another?
Yeah, it's a good point. So, I mean, it's interesting. I would say almost aesthetically, I think if you asked, I had this conversation with somebody the other day. If you asked somebody to like draw a pro wrestler, just what like the modern, like the pop culture idea of one, I think or to draw a match, I think you draw Windham and Two Cold Scorpio, something like that. Just the look and feel of it is so what, and it's a little bit, it's in America. It's a little bit later. It's a little bit crisper and that type of thing. But the style of it is much more probably familiar, I think, to like to what a lot of people understand to be pro wrestling. If that makes sense. Even some of the moveset, seeing DDTs and seeing people coming off the top rope and that type of thing. And whereas I truly think that Hansen and Funk is something that you grow into more as a fan the more you watch pro wrestling to appreciate it.
Yes.
Because they're not doing it's not as obvious in the spots that they're doing and the high points that they're doing in the match. It flows so much. We'll get into it more when we talk about them, but something that impresses me so much about Hansen and Funk, and a lot of Hansen matches in particular, is the flow throughout the match. You're not as conscious of the separation between the spots, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think a big part of that, so yeah, I think you're right. There's almost like a different approach to a layout of a match or a formula that you'd follow. The Barry Windham Scorpio one is more of a familiar sort of like formula that we see with sort of like your opening spot, your babyface fire, your heel heat, your comeback, your finishing sequence. Whereas you look at, and it's something that I really laugh about, like these, All Japan, Terry Funk, Stan Hansen matches. It seems so much more organic and almost like comparatively like more akin to like jazz, like free flowing, organic, reactive jazz music. It's almost like
100%.
that's the way they're wrestling. Like I very much doubt that Terry and Stan really talked much about what they were going to do beforehand, if at all. Maybe they had their finish. But I really do believe that 99% of what we saw in that match was just them reacting to one another and doing what they're feeling in the moment. And that's why I think it has such a different feeling to so much of what we see today. And that's such a thing that I respect so much, of like guys who can just go out there and reactively wrestle. It's amazing to see.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I sort of have a broad palette. Not you would have a broader one of what things I like in wrestling, and it's fun to. I mean, just recently on the weekend, AEW had Full Gear, and you have something like an Ospreay Fletcher match, which is like a worlds apart from Hansen and Funk. And I enjoyed both, but for very different reasons. But
yeah,
you're right. But it was even interesting, I thought, in talking about compare and contrast. Windham seemed to be more clearly, in terms of crowd reaction, more of a heel. And obviously, Hansen
Mm-hmm.
isn't the face of the Funk match, but the Japanese crowd still love him, even though he's
Yeah.
the heel of it. Like, he gets big reactions when he throws up the horns and all that type of thing. So even that was an interesting comparison. Whereas Windham and Scorpio are, it's very clear who the face is there. And once he has his comeback, the crowd really starts popping and building as that comeback builds throughout that match. That's much clearer the roles.
Yeah, for sure. I think the Too Cold Barry Windham match. While it is a bit more familiar in terms of that sort of like match layout, there is still a lot of stuff in it where you watch it and you look at it with today's eyes. And there's a lot of stuff that's like done well, like almost things that are gotten lazy over time, where it's just I don't know. There's little things in that match even where it's like a lot more modern than the Terry versus Stan match. But there's little things that I noticed, and I'm just like, man, that was so good, or that was so well done, or so more believable. Like just little sort of like transitory kind of stuff that I really respected about this, and it was really refreshing compared to a lot of current stuff that I might have been seeing lately.
Yeah, some of the spots in there, you also have a nice contrast of styles there as well too, because Two Gold Scorpio is so athletic and moves around so quickly, but he is smaller than Windham. So Windham's that also just works so well for a slower moving, bigger heel against that more dynamic, but still obviously jacked. He's in great shape. Two Cold Scorpio. So, and when he really starts going and starts moving with his comeback, that's so enjoyable to watch. And that's the part of that where that part in particular looks very modern. Like you could pick him up and plonk him into a modern match anywhere, and he would be able to go with everybody. So,
oh, dude, so Scorpio was so ahead of his time. That was one thing I was happy to have this as a match of the week and get to do the illustration of it. Like Scorp's been a favorite of mine for a long time. From when I probably first saw him in ECW. Maybe a little bit of his Flash Funk days back in the day, but yeah, getting to watch this like sort of like WCW period of his career is super cool to see, because you like look at this, and I think it's kind of cool when you watch this stuff. Try to watch it if you can. Like imagine like the kind of expectations of the time. Imagine you're sitting there in the Norfolk Scope Arena, and just thinking of what wrestling was like, and the expectations. Yeah, just like such a different world to now. So it really makes it stand out all the more. A dude like Two Cold Scorpio, about how ahead of his time he was, how innovative what he was doing. Like some of that shit that he was breaking out, you look at it with today's eyes, like the springboard 450, like over the rope, like wild.
Yeah, that is when he hits that. I was like, wow, like that's I think I made a noise because I just wasn't expecting it to. And you're right, you especially for that time, no one. I shouldn't. As soon as I say no one, someone will highlight like a luchador who was doing it, but you weren't seeing that type of thing in WWF. You weren't seeing it in probably, I wouldn't say even in All Japan. You'd know better than me, but it was so electric to see. And he's so big too. He's such a jacked guy. So when he does it, it looks like it would just suck to be hit by someone that big, spinning through the air, landing on you.
It's terrifying. Some of those spinning, flipping leg drop kind of shit that he'd do, and it's just like, man, I can only imagine him like being a little bit off and just murdering you with it.
Yep.
But yeah, so impressive, and it's yeah, like so impressive seeing a dude as big as Scorp doing that as well. But I also wanted to call attention to like Barry Windham. Barry Windham was a dude who was known for his agility too, and how the pace that he would wrestle at, and like the amount that he could move for a dude of his size, which I think we see in this match a bit. It's so funny, like, we were watching Barry Windham. I had a match on the last wrestling club with Barry Windham against Terry Funk in the mid '80s in Puerto Rico. So you get to see sort of like Barry as a kind of white meat baby face. Yeah, that sort of like classic era of Barry Windham when he was having all those rad matches with Ric Flair. And then fast forward 10 years or a little bit less or whatever, and seeing him as the sort of like Stan Hansen-esque, classic main event heel. Super cool. But yeah, I was quite impressed with Barry in this, almost as much as I was by Scorpio.
He drops a very nice DDT.
Oh yeah.
Love that. And he's wearing the classic wrestler cowboy boots combo as well, that like Bradshaw has worn and Billy Gunn has worn in these early WWF days and others. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it. Excellent match.
I love that look so much. The Dustin Rhodes early '90s look as well, with the cowboy boots and the trunks. But yeah, it's super cool as well. Like, this is just after, I believe, he's won the NWA World Title from Great Muta. And so finally getting to see Barry as world champion, when I think there were multiple points, in the late '80s or like early '90s that he definitely, should have been the champ at that time. So it might have come a little bit late, but I think it's still a really cool period. I'm really glad that it was a weird period in WCW at that point, because you had the WCW World Title and you had the NWA World Title, but I think it still counts. I think it still counts as a world title win.
Of course. When you came to the art for this one, what made you choose that with the ref in between that moment? What made you choose that?
I just have a lot of love for Nick Patrick, honestly. He I don't know if you've watched much like Eastbound and Down, but he reminds me so much of like Kenny Powers, like almost like an alternate reality where like Kenny Powers became like a professional wrestling referee. Like, he's just such a shit-eating like asshole ref, but he's got such an iconic look. I love the weird kind of like curly afro kind of thing, and man, I was like, I can't do this and not include Nick Patrick here. But other than that, yeah, I thought it was like a cool kind of like moment in the match where this was sort of like after the opening spot. I think Barry was like dominating for a bit, and then this was the first moment where Scorp caught him with like a cool drop kick or something, and Barry was a bit like kind of whiffed, and Too Cold's kind of like, yeah, man. Yeah. So I thought it captured a bit of that dynamic, which I thought was pretty cool. And Barry did a great job of kind of like selling the like he's a bit discombobulated, and Scorp just had that kind of like defiance about him, that I think would go on to tell like a really cool story later in the match. So yeah, I mean, the only other thing I probably would have if there was a good angle of that amazing slingshot 450, but it's so hard to do illustrations or still frames of moves that are just going that fast,
Yeah, and if you do it the wrong way, it's not really clear what's happening. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's moving, through the air. I'm sorry, I'm now just thinking about how great, like, a Kenny Powers like that show would be in a professional wrestling setting, like having him as your main character, surrounded by just the craziness of everything that goes on in the ring and outside the ring in a professional wrestling company.
Oh, I could definitely see a future series if they did it, a flat where Kenny's down on his luck and just has to go into the world of professional wrestling.
That'd be amazing.
And plus, shout out to how bloody incredible Will Ferrell is in his Ric Flair esque depiction in the show too.
Well, there was a lot of comments made during when the Iron Claw came out that they should have just cast Will Ferrell
Yes.
as that role, which would have, of course, never worked because it's such a depressing movie. To have him come in would have thrown you out of it completely. But 100%.
Would have been a big fan of that.
Yeah, the best Ric Flair depiction we've seen on screen, other than Ric Flair, was Will Ferrell.
Yeah. For sure. No one, I've long said no one can do Ric Flair other than Rick, but man, Will Ferrell did pretty close.
And he's tall. Will Ferrell's tall as well. Yeah, I don't know how he's going to get in shape. I think that moment has passed, but yeah, that'd be incredible.
Yeah, so yeah, I love this match, and I think it in some ways is kind of simple, a little bit basic in some bits, but I think it just really captures a moment in time well. And also I like to be able to shine a light on, to people who might not be that familiar with early 90s WCW, of just how great a dude like Barry Windham and a dude like Too Cold Scorpio were at this point. Because I'd hold that, each of those guys' work at this time up against anything you see these days.
Yeah, totally.
All right, so that brings us on to our other half of our double header here, the aforementioned match with Terry and Stan Hansen, and this is like, I often, you know how much I love Terry Funk. I'm just going down Terry rabbit holes all day, and the cool thing is there's so many different kind of Terry rabbit holes you can go down. But I think for a lot of people, his best work was this sort of like super gaijin babyface that I still think like the most beloved any gaijin has ever been in the history of Japanese wrestling. Like the way you see it in this match, the sympathy that the crowd has for him, the love they have for him. It's like you very rarely would see the same level of care for like a gaijin outsider as you would have for like a Japanese wrestler that these people have like watched growing up. But I feel like Terry and Dory also had that relationship with the Japanese fans at this time. So I think it's a very special point. Like for anyone that loves Terry Funk, you can't not go into this sort of like ultra babyface side of his classic All Japan work. And yeah, I thought this was super interesting as well, getting to see him against a dude that I love as well so much as the Lariat, Stan Hansen. Two guys that are so similar in a lot of ways, both from West Texas. Two dudes that are, like we said before, I think quite similar in terms of the way that approach a match in such an organic kind of manner. Two dudes that throw a bloody awesome punch, and they're just like rugged approach to wrestling, looks like it hurts, and like we've said before, probably does.
No doubt. Well, first of all, thank you, because Stan's also one of my all-time favourites. You go down
Excellent.
Terry rabbit holes, I go down Stan Hansen rabbit holes. He doesn't have the variation or the length of the career that Terry does, or probably and this is no knock on him,
not many people in wrestling as a whole have any of those things of Terry, so that's no
true.
Slide on Stan.
No, that's what I was about to say. That's no dig at him. But in this match, he looks like someone in the bar, the Blues Brothers bar, where they start throwing bottles through. He looks like the hat he's wearing just looks like he could be in that bar.
Yes.
And your description of this match when you did it, your post on Instagram, is so right. It is like watching Roadhouse. Just two big guys get into a fight at the bar, and everyone's just like, just let him go. Like, don't get involved. You'll just end up copping an elbow or a bottle to the face yourself. Like just
like
stay.
the poor referee in this match.
Two referees.
Right?
The two referees get smashed. I even wrote down what was the part here? Stan Lariat's the replacement referee. But they're not even the first victim. The poor first victim is one of the flower girls at the start, where Stan runs at Terry, and Terry, like moving out of the way, just fucking bumps her over, and someone has to help this poor little woman out of the ring while these two monsters start brawling with each other. It's funny because I wrote down little notes, and like the first half of my notes are all about what Terry's doing, and then the second half of my notes are all about what Stan's doing, and I think that sort of is telling in terms of how the match is playing out. But so many things, like he talked about that sympathy with Terry. Terry has like a naturally kind of emotional face. Do you know what I mean? Like he looks a little bit hound dog, a little bit sad, a little like maybe that's, I don't know whether that's why.
I mean, it's part of one of the things I love about drawing Terry. Both him and Dory have those sort of like, the hound dog eyes where they sort of like go up in the middle, like sad eyes, and I think that's seriously part of the Terry magic.
Yeah, well, and then there was some great stuff in here. Like there's a really weird little part I loved where Terry is standing up, stands on his knees, and Terry's hitting him in the head with their elbows, and sort of in a lot of Stan Hansen matches, you see him do this thing a lot where he's getting wailed on, and he'll just out of nowhere snap out of it, and not in a Hulk Hogan kind of way, but he'll basically just counter punch and go on the offensive like on a dime. And there's many times when he'll just hit someone with the lariat out of that and end a match as well. But in this, Stan's copping it, and then he really just sort of tackles Terry and pins him in the one move. But it's great. It sounds like really boring to describe.
He just kind of like holds him down with like, because he double legs him and he just like holds onto his legs. And you just think of a dude that's like a 300-pound southern behemoth like Stan Hansen, just like mauling you and just holding you down against your will. And I love that he's just sort of like holding him, and then Terry's kind of like punching back. But it's those like weird little moments in these kind of matches that I live for.
Oh, and then I think Terry gets out of it by gouging him in the eyes or poking him in the eye or something. But incredible. And then, but throughout the whole thing, what I mentioned a bit before, but just the flow, the transition through it all, and I think I think you're dead set right. They're not, because they are just working together and have great chemistry, and that's how they work. They're not getting into a position to be like, all right, I've got to stand here because he's going to hit me with this, a kick here, or I've got to get in the position for something else. They're just flowing with how things are going, and I think that's why it just rolls around.
So much back and forth as well, because just like, one's on top, then the other hits something, the other one's on top for a bit, and it just feels, that's what I mean by feeling a bit more organic. It's not like this overly choreographed kind of deal, and obviously like it's less polished as a result. But I mean, the more wrestling that I watch, it's this kind of unpolished, dirty kind of rough around the edges stuff that really that impresses me a lot more these days than seeing the most crisp, seamless athletic display.
But the thing is, though, like, you say unpolished, but at the same time, and probably because they are actually connecting with a lot of these strikes, but you're not seeing like quote unquote botches though. You're not seeing an elaborate jump off the top, do this thing. Oh, I can tell he's out of position there. You're not seeing that because they're just scrapping and throwing punches, and it works, so it flows. That also helps it flowing better, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And such good punches. Both similar to when we were talking about the Finlay Terry match. So much of this match I was thinking about what you said about like the punches and the receiving of said punches and reacting to said punches. that is just such a marvelous part of this match too.
Totally. I was trying to think the other thing I wanted to, you talk about, you have your Terryisms that you like to see. We got one where Terry got caught in the ropes again.
Yes.
But even that, like the way he does it, it's believable. He doesn't sort of, he doesn't look like he's actually, even though he is just laying there, he could easily get out of them. And I was also thinking about, because it is more believable and smaller scale, some of the things they do which aren't that dangerous feel more dangerous. So at one point there, Terry's outside the ring and Stan just picks up this small aluminium chair and just throws it at him. Even though Terry's in the crowd, he just throws, Stan, he just throws it. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, Stan, careful. There's people there. You can't just be throwing chairs, mate. And it's so funny that my reaction to that, is so much more visceral than if I watch, you can watch a death match, but because the death match and violence is so heightened and so extreme, it takes more to get a reaction out of you. But then in this context, I was like, oh, God, be careful. You're throwing chairs about. You like again, if I was watching a bar fight and in a real bar in real life and someone picked up a chair and threw it at somebody, I'd be like, Jesus Christ, what is going on?
Oh, man. I think in general, I think there were multiple points where it just felt like someone was either gonna cop an errant chair, or where someone pulled a chair out from someone who might have even been sitting there. Just the general sort of vibe of absolute recklessness and no consideration whatsoever for the fans' safety. So good.
Can we talk about the finish and the way that all unfolds?
Absolutely, but first there's one thing I wanted to make sure to touch on. You talk about those little moments, those Terryisms. One of the things I really love about Stan Hansen, his pointed short toe kicks. They always look so painful whenever he does them. It's just no one, I think, has ever done a little kick as quite as good as Stan does there, and he does them to Terry here. I believe there's some to the back of the head, but also followed up by a wonderful knee drop to the back of Terry's head that is just so bloody violent and uncomfortable. And Terry's selling.
Oh, yes.
Terry's selling of this. Oh my gosh, he is face down. He's just had the back of his head get some sort of brain injury, and he just starts spasming, just start shaking.
Yes.
Flopping around, and man, it was honestly one of my favorite parts of the match. Just such uncomfortable violence.
No, thank you for mentioning that, because I love that too. And it's exactly that. All he's doing is dropping the knee onto the back of a guy's head, right? He's not jumping through the air or whatever. But it is that thing. If someone the size of Stan Hansen dropped their knee onto the back of your head, yeah, you would start spasming.
Yeah, and it's one of those sort of things to appreciate in a match like this, where you don't have the crazy high spots or athletic feats or whatever, but it's the little things that you notice as a result, because I guess you're paying a closer level of attention. That it really makes you appreciate these little moments that it's so special when you really think about it.
Absolutely. And on that topic too, I love the way Stan drops elbows on people.
Yes.
Just sort of stands tall, pulls his knee up and just cocks his elbow and just falls like a gigantic Texas tree onto another human being. It's because that's all he has to do. If you're that big, you don't need to put all the sauce on it. He said, I'm just going to fall on you and crush you.
So good. And yeah, probably would. So great. And let's please now talk about the finish here, because the finish and post-match are just absolutely wonderful, I feel.
Well, so Stan we have interference. It's an interference match. Stan hitting Terry with the lariat. And it's actually, there's a point earlier in the match. It's so funny because the lariat is such a simple move, but the way that which the Japanese crowds are watching so intently, and the minute Stan even looks like he's raising his arm, which is such a nothing. Well, no, sorry, I should say nothing. It's such a small build up for what is his finish, but they're so primed for it.
It's so iconic. I mean, they're throwing up the horns and yelling at the top of his lungs. I actually found out later, or not too long ago, that he's actually yelling "youth" when he's doing it, which I think is a lovely little touch. But the fact that it's proceeding like this lariat of death, I can totally understand exactly why it's so over, but it's such a little cool thing he does.
It's fantastic, but yeah, you get the interference. They're exchanging, and then Terry gets his arm pinned, so he can't defend himself. Charges, hits him with a hit with the lariat, and then the way in which Terry falls out of rings, like he falls out so convincingly. And then he's out there, he does the twitching, he starts twitching again after getting the lariat. But then what's amazing is throughout this whole chaotic finish and then post-match is Terry is selling the lariat the entire time. Occasionally they cut back to him and all this other crazy is going on. There's people in the ring, there's people out of the ring, and Terry is still selling. And one of my little favorite parts is Stan Stan lariats him. He falls out of the ring. Stan then tries to get Terry back in the ring, and Terry is just like a corpse. Like he can't get him back in the ring. He's not helping him whatsoever because he's like, yeah, you just killed me. I can't help you here. It's incredible.
I love that. Like just totally like corpsing. Like, yeah, motherfucker, you're gonna have to use all your might to pick me back up. But yeah, I thought this whole thing is so great. Stan just comes across as such an absolute monster, monster heel in this. Really sets up the future for more matches that Terry and Stan would go on to have. I'm personally real excited to watch whatever their next interaction is going to be after this. But yeah, a bit of a sign of the times where you would have a bit of a fuck screwy kind of finish, especially on a Korakuen Hall show like this, where you're not going to be able to have clean finishes amongst, like big stars like these two. But I think, it more than makes up for it when it's done this damn well. Like, I enjoyed the heck out of the post match here. And the part where bloody Jumbo and Giant Barber come out, dude.
Can I give you like my two favorite moments? One is where Stan just absolutely, there's no question, he just absolutely elbows one of those poor people in the head like when they try and break it up. And the other one is he does this thing where he goes out of the ring, goes around the ring post, comes back into the ring, only so he can low blow Jumbo Tsuruta from behind.
Such a sneaky move.
He goes out of the ring, you think he's going to leave. He goes around the ring post, back in, Jumbo Tsuruta's brawling with someone else or something, and he goes crack and low blows him. Then, as he's leaving, he picks up like a row of chairs, like a row of 4 or 5.
Oh, man.
And just throws that in the ring and walks out.
So good.
I'm like, what a maniac. Like, God, unbelievable.
So, man, I just they did such a damn great job in making Stan a total monster, just total chaos. I think they played off, the different people involved as well in such a great way, but I just thought this was perfect. It's so well done and just absolute chaos and insanity in the best of ways. And more than anything, it just gets you ready for whatever's coming next.
Yeah, if you're going to do a chaotic ending, this is how you do a chaotic ending. And one of the great shots of it is, again, all this chaos is going on and they cut back to Terry. You've almost forgotten that Terry was even there. And he's on the ground like clutching at his throat, like he can't breathe.
Yeah.
And like this is not like a modern company where they've got so many cameras ringside, and there would be someone there to, focus in on him. It's this one shot. You're like, oh yeah, Terry was in this match, and he's there choking from the lariat he got 4 minutes ago. And meanwhile, like, pandemonium has broken out. And the other thing, I think I recently saw a thing online which was about like wrestling myths and like sort of busting them. And one of them was about how Japanese crowds are always really quiet and respectful and all this type of stuff. But if you watch any of these, like All Japan in the 90s, like they, and not just them, but like a lot of Japanese crowd, they'll make a huge amount of noise, yes. almost constant. And it will surge and rise, but it will be almost constant noise through some of these matches, and not a very big arena often.
Yeah, and they're building up to a fever pitch too. You watch some of these matches, and they start out a little bit slower, and the crowd's like a little bit quiet, like paying attention kind of thing. But invariably, every great Japanese wrestling match by the main part, that crowd is going wild, as much as any crazy crowd that you'd see. And exactly as we saw in the closing moments here.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. And for the art for this one, I love that you've chosen to go with the fisticuffs exchange between the two.
Yeah, it's the Roadhouse moment to me. It's like these two rugged Texans, grabbing each other by the hair, ready to just like punch each other in the face, or a moment between doing so. And that was the thinking right there, sort of capturing those amazing punches as well, and the selling as we spoke about. But yeah, that was the vibe I was going for. But yeah, the colors on this, man, I spoke a little bit about it in the post, but sometimes you do an illustration and the color scheme just sort of like comes together. It's great. Other times it takes so long, and this took so long. I don't know why, it just wasn't working. But it eventually got there, so I was happy about that. And all in all, I'm quite happy about this one, I think.
No, it's awesome. Yeah, it's just that because they do, and I'm convinced, like you said, that the reason their punches look so good is they are just hitting each other with like 75% strength in the head. It's not all their strength, because they'd be dead, but it's that. I don't think they're just brushing. I think they're connecting on a lot of these shots.
So convincing. I love this match. I love the moments of this match. The little bits, the convincingness of these sick punches. I just love this whole scene, and there's this whole era of All Japan. Pretty all sorts of All Japan. This time period, the early 80s, mid 80s, 70s stuff is sick. I adore it. And then obviously the later heyday, but any All Japan you watch is going to be a bloody delight, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. A huge All Japan fan. My recommendation, if I'm making any, is just basically watch any Stan Hansen match you can get your eyes on, because for me, I just love the way he works matches. Totally believable, totally brutal, even though for a guy who, isn't hitting people with fluorescent tubes and that type of thing. I much more believe that Stan Hansen has killed people at the end of matches than at the end of most things called a death match, to be honest. I'd probably rather be in a death match than be in a match with Stan Hansen, from everything I've heard.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure wrestling stat will hurt more than light tubes.
just ask Vader and his eye. So that's my suggestion. So yeah, thank you for letting me talk about this one. Anytime you want to talk about Stan Hansen, I'm game.
Dude, no, thank you so much. I adore Stan. I really love. I think my favorite period of Stan Hansen is that 90s period where he's really that surly, getting into his senior years kind of guy, and there's this young crop of Kobashi, Kawada, Masawa, Taue. Got later on with Akiyama. Man, just so good. I love all the Stan, and I like that we get to share that.
Yeah, thank you. No, I love all those matches, and there's a couple of great sort of, I don't know you want to call them like video blogs about Stan Hansen and his All Japan career on YouTube from Kim Justice's Wrestling Road.
Oh, nice.
I can recommend those as well if people are keen.
Okay, awesome. Everyone, get on that. All right, dude. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for coming back on. I think it was a great chat, and I'd love to have you on in the future.
Thank you for having me. Anytime, absolutely anytime.
Dude, very more than welcome, and I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday at Wrestling Club.
Whoop whoop woo! I should master the Stan Hansen. You or whatever he yells out.
Heck yeah! All right, thanks, dude. I'll talk to you later.
See you, mate.
Cheers. All right, there we go. Thank you, Joe. I thought that was a very fun episode. Anytime I get to nerd out about these matches that I, obviously enjoy so much that I've made an art of them, it's a good time. And I very much like that, when I can be talking to other people, I get something out of them too. If you guys, anyone listening, this opens your eyes to a different kind of like wrestling rabbit hole that's out there of sick stuff. That makes me very happy. That's my hope. Maybe I remember back in the day when I used to listen to a lot of wrestling podcasts, listening to dudes like Rob Naylor, or reading different stuff from like Phil Schneider on the Death Valley Driver forums, and just being a total nerdy wrestling teenager. I was obviously not the most experienced with the ladies at that point. But I don't regret a moment of it, but yeah, I guess it's hearing people talk with that level of passion about something, and especially like wrestling, that obviously was a big part of my continued love affair with it. So if we can vibe on that together, I think that's pretty darn good. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I'd like to say a big old thank you to the team at Social Suplex for allowing me to do this thing. Socialsuplex.com, all sorts of wrestling podcasts there. From One Nation Radio, Keeping It Strong Style, the New Japan podcast featuring friend of the show, the young boy Josh Smith. I mean, you're all friends of the show. You're all friends of the show. The Tunnel Talk, the Trish and Sarah podcast, Imps WWE Adventure, All Things Elite, the AEW Match Recommendation podcast. There's all sorts of stuff. So if you want a wrestling podcast, it's a great place to go. But I'm stoked that I get to do this thing. They even throw me a little bit of advertising money from time to time, so I'm appreciative of that. I mean, it's enough for a couple of coffee every now and then. So that's something. But if you guys would like to support, I really appreciate you guys. Just if you just want to listen to the show and whatever, I appreciate that. If you do want to do a little bit more, I do make art at christhings.com.au. It's a place where you can go and you can find a bunch of that art. We've got art prints, these match of the week illustrations that we're talking about. You can get it in art print form. You can get a fancy print sent out. I'll sign it up for you. I'll include a little special surprise more often than not with it for you. You can even buy it pre-framed if you don't want to worry about the hassles of framing. And yeah, it just honestly makes me very happy to think that these weird creations of mine, littering people's homes. I walked into a friend's house once upon a time and found a piece of mine on the toilet adjacent wall. That made me quite happy. The thought that every time they're having a bowel movement, they're coming out and they're looking at my picture of Andre the Giant holding some semi-naked ladies on his shoulders or whatever it was. That tickled me a lot. So yeah, the idea that my art is a part of people's everyday lives in their homes, it's a very nice thing. But yeah, if you want to buy those things, you can do that. I also do commissions, so if you ever have a special commission piece, maybe now's a good time with the lead up to Christmas. Maybe you got a special someone in your life you want to get a little Chris Things something for. Maybe me to do a little drawing of your dog, of you guys as a couple, as Mexican wrestlers. I don't know where you want to go, but if you have the inspiration, if you have a cool commission idea in mind, bloody hit me up, because it is the weirder the better. If I've got some super interesting, fun, weird things that people have got me to draw over the years, and I adore it. So the more out of the box you can get, the better. If you want a Chris Things original commission piece, I would be more than happy to do that for you. So swing me a message. Tell me what you have in mind. I'll be able to let you know the approximate, what I think the costings of that would look like in terms of my time. And we can bring this into the world, and I love doing that. So, at the end of the day, however you want to support, I'm happy with that, and I really do appreciate it. It means the world to me that you guys help me live my dream of being an artist, of doing this full time. I'm stoked to do it, and please know that every time you do support in any way, even if it's just a little nice comment anyway, it means a lot to me. So yeah, thanks guys. I hope this was a fun little old episode. Back to our match of the week goodness. And I am excited to hopefully have a Wrestling Art Curator episode coming up for you in the near future. I'm talking to some cool people, so we'll see where that goes. All right, I will catch you guys later, and until next week, enjoy.
Do the hammer